Suffering. Meditating on suffering is for the sake of understanding what suffering is. With this understanding, we can learn how to free ourselves from suffering and attain happiness. When reflecting on suffering, it's essential to examine the aggregates of oneself and others. As Lama Tsongkhapa said, without a genuine disenchantment with the nature of the samsaric aggregates, one will not generate a sincere aspiration for liberation. Then, reflect on each aggregate, which is momentary and composite. There are experiences we call pain, those that seem pleasant until they change, and those that cause future woe. Thus, the aggregates are the basis of suffering. Next, observe the composite aggregates, our bodies, the 5 aggregates. In each moment, we can see that they are either obviously suffering, or seem pleasant but will eventually change, or lead to future suffering. Hence, the aggregates are the basis of suffering. From the perspective of multiplicity, we can see that the 5 aggregates form feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness consist of countless particles and mental states. Now, observe whether this set of aggregates is happiness or suffering in each moment. If we recognize the 5 aggregates as inherently suffering, we can understand the nature of samsara and arouse renunciation. In terms of feeling, the 5 aggregates can be categorized into 3 types. 1. Feelings that are obviously unsatisfactory. Examples include physical pain, like kidney pain, and mental suffering like despair and anguish. These physical and mental sufferings in each moment are the suffering of suffering. 2. Feelings that seem pleasant, such as enjoying pleasant sights, sounds, and other sensory pleasures. When you listen to melodious music, appreciate beautiful scenery, or dine with a charming companion, you may feel happy. But is this truly happiness? If it were inherently happiness, it would not change or end in suffering. However, samsaric pleasures vanish instantly. Because these pleasant feelings are fleeting, they are the suffering of change in each moment. As stated in the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, like dew on the grass tip, pleasures of the 3 worlds, last only a while and then vanish. This kind of happiness is actually an attachment, which we call the suffering of change. We will elaborate on it later. 3. All imperfect feelings, whether pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, will give rise to subsequent suffering. Therefore, each moment is all-pervasive suffering. The all-pervasive suffering is characterized by change and impermanence. Beings in the desire realm heavens enjoy pleasures for thousands of years, and those in the formless realm abide in meditative absorption for 80,000 kalpas. However, they are all immersed in the all-pervasive suffering. Their 5 aggregates are changing from moment to moment. Although they seem free from suffering in meditative absorption, they will fall into misery once they emerge from that state. Reflect on all suffering in the threefold world. As much as you can, it all arises from the imperfection of the aggregates. This explanation is not deep enough. Let's elaborate on the 3 types of suffering. The suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and all-pervasive suffering. The suffering of suffering is something we are all familiar with. we experience it every day: hunger, discomfort, drowsiness, etc. When drowsiness arises, we feel uncomfortable. Lying down and closing our eyes might bring some relief. After a nap, we may feel a bit refreshed. However, some individuals burdened by heavy karmic obstacles may feel discomfort even when awake. The 5 aggregates are immersed in the suffering of suffering. When there is no suffering of suffering, you may experience the suffering of change. For example, when you feel hungry and have the merit to buy delicious food, you order your favorite dishes at a nice restaurant and enjoy a big meal. You may perceive this as happiness. But is it truly happiness? When you eat, take a moment to observe where the pleasure comes from, perhaps the taste on your tongue, like sweet, spicy, or sour, triggers your desire, a constant craving for taste sensations. Many people swallow the food without savoring the flavors when hungry or thirsty, just like Zubajie eating watermelon. It appears as happiness, but in reality, it is suffering. Why? It's because the pleasure we experience is an alleviation of suffering. Only when you are hungry do you find food tasty. When you are full, even the most delicious food won't tempt you. Therefore, eating is a mitigation of hunger, and we call it happiness. Similarly, we feel comfortable when sleeping because fatigue is a form of suffering, and sleep relieves us from this suffering. When desire arises, you suffer. Thus, you seek ways to fulfill it, hoping to alleviate the suffering of desire. When you are angry and someone cheers you up, you may feel happy. However, it's simply because your anger has subsided. You haven't gained anything. It's just that your anger or desire has diminished. Once your craving is satisfied and alleviated, it temporarily disappears. All happiness is like taking drugs. When someone takes drugs, they feel excited and may even experience hallucinations. In fact, it's because their nervous system gets numbed, putting them in a state similar to meditative absorption, which allows them to see things they couldn't see before, such as ghosts and heavenly things. They may think it's a hallucination, but it's not. However, once the effects of the drugs wear off, their nervous system suffers greatly. Thus, they feel compelled to continue taking drugs. Every person is a drug addict, addicted to the 5 poisons. The 5 poisons are the roots of our spiritual decline. What seems like happiness is actually suffering at the very moment you enjoy it. For example, observe your mental process. When you feel thirsty and drink some water, you develop an attachment to this sensation, the relief from thirst. Once the thirst is alleviated, you generate an attachment that worldly people call happiness. Observe it, and you will find this is our mental process. When suffering is alleviated, we generate attachment. When suffering intensifies, we arouse aversion. The alleviation of suffering is called the suffering of change. There is no genuine happiness in samsara. Therefore, we should first reduce our desires. The human and heavenly vehicle also follows this principle. Those who follow this vehicle should observe the 5 precepts, refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and consuming intoxicants, which is essentially a way to reduce desires. The happiness found in the human and heavenly vehicle comes from reducing desires. First, observe the 5 precepts. Then practice the 10 virtuous actions. Why practice the 10 virtuous actions? To reduce our desire, anger, and ignorance. The eighth of the 10 virtuous actions is to be content and compassionate, which aims at reducing our desires. Only when desires decrease can we be content with what we have. Only when greed diminishes can we become compassionate, willing to give alms and care for others. In essence, the 10 virtuous actions help us reduce greed, thereby diminishing suffering. The so-called happiness lies in having fewer desires. Celestial beings have fewer desires than us, so they are happier. Some individuals follow the human and heavenly vehicle in the wrong way. They give generously but also enjoy excessively. On one hand, they perform virtuous deeds, but on the other hand, they remain greedy and are never satisfied with what they have. In their pursuit of wealth, they engage in harmful activities without considering the consequences or the suffering of others. Many people commit all the 10 unwholesome actions: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, worthless chatter, sowing discord, harsh words, and more, while making money. After obtaining profits through such means, they feel distressed. Thus, they do some virtuous deeds, such as donation. In fact, they are not genuinely giving. Instead, they are buying reputation. Through donations, they get admiration and respect, gaining social status. They use money to purchase social status and respect from others. Such behavior is not virtuous. After spending money, they desire even more in return. Can this be considered a virtuous act? No. Genuine virtuous actions entail giving without expecting anything in return. In today's China, many so-called philanthropists use money to buy fame, status, respect, and more. They even buy false reputations for their businesses to make others believe in them. While deceiving others with low-quality products, they use money to gain respect. In such a society, everyone suffers. The genuine practice of the 10 virtuous actions involves being content with fewer desires and cultivating generosity. Only in this way can we nurture noble qualities. In the UK, there are noble families who enjoy immense blessings. Why? Because they had practiced the 10 virtuous actions. In the past, people looked down upon merchants. Why? Because merchants were seen as greedy individuals who worked tirelessly for profit. Conversely, in today's society, even if you are a gangster, as long as you are rich, many people will envy you. How ignorant today's people are. In ancient times, people knew how to be free from suffering and attain happiness by cultivating positive qualities and practicing the 10 virtuous actions. Many people today regard sensory pleasures as happiness, but they are not. As we can see, many wealthy individuals are far from happy because they don't practice the 10 virtuous actions. Although they possess some wealth, perhaps the karmic rewards accumulated in past lives, combined with money earned through opportunistic and deceitful means in this life, are they happy? Of course not, because they don't know the path to happiness. We pursue genuine happiness. In the heavenly realms, beings have fewer and lighter desires. Beyond that is the path to transcend samsara, which is not easy. That's why people often view monastics as peculiar. Monastics aspire to break free from cyclic existence, a goal that worldly people cannot understand. The ancients said, renunciation is not something that emperors, generals, or ministers can do. Monastics are courageous, but it is hard for worldly people to understand them. Monastics aspire to transcend samsara, eliminate all desires, and uproot the attachment to self. The purity, freedom, and peace they strive for are beyond the comprehension of beings in the three realms. How can you experience it if you have never gone through it? It's essential to follow the methods taught by the Buddha. One day, you will find that transcending samsara is possible. You can break free from the cycle of reincarnation, uproot self-grasping, and transcend the notion of I. Those who reach such a spiritual state are arhats. Arhats are free from suffering. They have eradicated the suffering of change, and all-pervasive suffering. For an arhat, samsaric happiness is the suffering of change. Please remember, the suffering of change is not a pain distinct from happiness. Many people who have studied the Dharma for years still believe that happiness exists, and that the loss of happiness is the suffering of change. This understanding is wrong. The suffering of change refers to happiness itself, not its disappearance. From the perspective of an enlightened being, what you perceive as happiness is actually a form of suffering, a result of having no choice, not happiness. For instance, when you feel thirsty and must drink water, do you have a choice? Imagine transcending thirst and the need for drinking. How wonderful that would be. Another example is having psoriasis and the urge to scratch. When you scratch, it's painful, yet you perceive it as happiness. When you apply ointment to the affected area and scratch it, you may find it even more pleasurable, even if it causes bleeding. You regard it as happiness. But wouldn't it be better to cure this dermatitis? Why endure suffering first, and then seek happiness by relieving that pain? This is how worldly beings operate. They create pain first and then seek happiness by alleviating it. They perceive this as happiness. However, an arhat knows this is not happiness. When you reach that spiritual level, you will observe through your concentration and wisdom that this is not happiness. Ordinary beings cannot see it. They think, this is clearly happiness. Why do you say it's not? For example, a dog finds pleasure in eating fresh feces, but not in eating stale feces. Do you regard this as happiness? A fly, however, doesn't care when the feces are produced. It always finds pleasure in eating them. Bacteria and pathogens don't bother a fly. It views them as nourishment. So, is this happiness? What is the difference between us and flies or dogs? In essence, we are more or less the same. Similarly, some people don't like eating durian because they find its smell unpleasant, while others enjoy it. I will read the final paragraph of the Essence of Happiness, which I composed smoothly with the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Suffering arises because desires are not fulfilled. Desires are not fulfilled due to insufficient wealth and merit. Insufficient wealth and merit result from a lack of virtuous deeds. The lack of virtuous deeds stems from selfishness. Selfishness arises from excessive desires. satisfying excessive desires consumes immense effort and resources. Consuming immense effort and resources leads to a shortage of manpower and resources, even the destruction of resources and the environment. A shortage of manpower and resources prevents desires from being fulfilled. Unfulfilled desires, in turn, lead to suffering. Thus, this vicious cycle repeats over and over again. This is our current situation. Ordinary beings are ignorant of the law of karma. They are narrow-minded and only care about their immediate desires, like Mysore monkeys. As practitioners, we should stand up to broaden our vision. Animals lie on the ground, which limits their view to only a small amount of food or potential mates in front of them. Humans can stand up and gain a broader view. Moreover, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas come to our world in human form to guide us. They lead us towards their realm for further education and practice. Every day, humans experience various suffering of change, and in particular, all-pervasive suffering. As practitioners, we can gradually experience the torment of all-pervasive suffering when we have to do something that we don't want to do. Ordinary beings follow their karmic tendencies, so they don't notice all-pervasive suffering. Yet, when we recognize this state as suffering, we don't want to engage in it but have no choice. When karmic force strikes, we cannot control ourselves. This is all pervasive suffering. Among the 6 classes of beings, Asuras have intense jealousy or competitiveness. Their desire to surpass others is intense, exceeding all other desires. In this regard, those with slightly more virtues tend to have strong competitiveness, while those who lack virtues tend to have strong jealousy. Beings in the desire realm heavens are immersed in sensory pleasures. However, their imperfect bodies are gradually aging and will eventually fall into misery. Those in the formless realm dwell in meditative absorption, free from pain and pleasure. However, there is an underlying woe. With each passing moment, they draw closer to downfall. Their conditioned bodies will inevitably emerge from meditative absorption. Once their throwing karma is exhausted, they will fall into the lower realms. All sentient beings in the 6 realms continuously undergo reincarnations, immersed in the 3 types of suffering. There is not even a pinpoint-sized speck in these contaminated aggregates that is free from suffering. There is not even the tiniest spot where suffering is absent, not even a moment devoid of suffering. No matter where you are reborn, as long as you are bound by the 5 aggregates, you cannot escape all pervasive suffering. Chinese term 行苦. It corresponds to the teaching in the 12 links of dependent origination. Ignorance gives rise to the formation of karma. Xing refers to the formation of karma. As long as you have karma, you cannot get rid of all pervasive suffering. Beings undergo reincarnations again and again without an end. Until you attain enlightenment, your 5 aggregates will constantly generate suffering. Take time to reflect on the inevitable birth, aging, illness, and death that each body must experience. Comprehend the suffering of change and all pervasive suffering thoroughly and meditate on them regularly. Hence, the aggregates are the source of suffering. like a filthy swamp or a fire pit. Abide in this insight for as long as you can. The 5 aggregates, even as minute as a particle or a moment, are burned by the fire of the 3 types of suffering, without any peace or freedom. Once you recognize the nature of the 5 aggregates, maintain this insight for as long as you can, and don't let it fade. Keep practicing in this way, and you will see that the 5 aggregates are like a filthy swamp and a fire pit. At this point, who would still cling to the 5 aggregates? Moreover, you will arouse a strong disenchantment with them and an ambition to end the cycle of reincarnation and attain liberation from conditioned existence. This is known as the aspiration for liberation.